Google just announced their new Studio Flow and VO3 video generation model. And we're going to break down today how this is a game changer for creating an autonomous business media company. And the opportunity is literally in the billions of value to be created here in every aspect. So let's dive in. Hey everybody, I'm Kevin Nust, co-founder of Mesh AI Studio. I have my co-founder Calvin here with us today as well. Hey Calvin.
Hey guys. Hey Kevin.
And across Mesh and our other Studio Props labs, we've worked with a lot of creators and builders and founders on media. And so today we're super excited to go through what Google has dropped here in their I/O conference, and the tools are just off the charts powerful and super, very opens up a lot of new use cases of how to put these together. So I don't know, Calvin, where do we want to start pulling this apart? How do you want to summarize what they dropped here at Google I/O?
I think Kevin, it's just wild, right? Like a year ago everyone was making fun of Google as a slow incumbent, and everything that they dropped at Google I/O yesterday was just wild. And we can see how Google is just not just picking up pace, but actually outpacing everyone when it comes to what they're putting out right now. And one of the main things here was what they dropped in terms of video tools, right? We've seen great updates in the last couple of months with Runway 4. We've seen a lot of when Kling 2 and 2.5 came out, it was all great. But yesterday, Google dropped Flow and VO3. And what's so astoundingly different with that is that, now you have native sound and lip sync. And the demos that they've been showing and what you see on Flow TV, which they launched alongside that, is mind-blowing, because now you have actual realistic mimic and emotion and speech and audio to your clips. So it actually feels like you have a complete realistic shot out of the box. It now feels like we can produce movies. And it's crazy because I looked at the last couple of videos of the Door Brothers, for example, that they released, or everything that people submitted for Runway 4 for the Gen 48 competition. And if you look at that, it's all great, but you can still see how the creators are kind of trying to circumvent showing a character talking, right? You can see they had all sorts of handy tricks. The Door Brothers showed people just from behind. Other people just have, a soundtrack overlay. But with Google now, we entered an era with VO3 where you have realistic speech. So like you said, now we're looking at an opportunity in the billions of media creation. And we're not just talking, media creation or media entertainment companies, which we will get into in a second. But everyone across the board, I think, can harness this with massive potential to produce, livid content out here.
Yeah, and I'll try to show a few of these videos here, right, that you can go to, just Google Flow, and you can see just the amazing content coming out of here. Very visual. These are great. The ones that are, I think, super impressive are, let's see, maybe in some of these, we have realistic people. I don't know if you can hear that lip synced audio out of there. And this just opens up like movie level quality instantly.
Yeah, which is, you have full audio, right? It's not just like if you show the sailor, the first video up there, right? And we can't hear the sound right now, but I guess we're going to share a couple of links after. The realism in the expression and the faces, right? And you have the sound of the one talking, and you have the sound of the waves. You have the full audio composition in there, right? It's just fascinating.
Super fascinating. The one with the origami here, it literally makes up what would it sound like if you threw pieces of paper in the air and then like slid them together across the floor, right? The sound design based off of the scenery, the futuristic one here where has this forward motion as if you're flying through the air. You look at that out of the box and you're getting that, right? is really kind of bonkers. That's a lot of hours of sound design to create great videos like that is typically what you'll hear out of creators that are doing short form content that's visual like that. You can get those visuals out of different places, and then you spend 5x the time, 10x the time actually doing the sound design part, which brings it all together. Otherwise, it's silent pictures that doesn't invoke that emotion, right? And so lots of stuff here. It's just like such a mic drop
Right,
of an
and
announcement.
especially like the realistic character emotions and talking. Like I said, like if I looked, you know, some of the nights I spent watching through the, like I said, the Gen 48 runway competition, and you know, just browsing through all the amazing submissions. And that's the one thing that's been missing across the board, right? People have managed to, you know, put a scratch sound in here or put a walking sound in there and all of that, but you just couldn't show a character actually talking and expressing emotion. Now we're here, right? And we've been talking about that for a year. Yeah, it's just wild, right? Like it's beyond. And so if you think about like the implications that this has, and I think, yeah, look at her and everything that is in there. It is just wild. Look at like her, the facial expression, the whole emotion, the tears and everything, and just, you know, her, like this is her, you know, talking and singing a lullaby, and it's just wild.
Like this is Netflix ready. This is
Yeah,
right. You put
right.
this on Netflix, is another piece of content sitting there side by side to another one of their shows that they put out, and it's it would be consumed. You wouldn't People wouldn't think twice about this and seeing it on the screen.
Right, yeah, you feel like you're actually watching a movie, and it's just look at the expressiveness, and also a couple of things that went sort of um, that weren't talked about a lot is also the physical model behind it, right? The physics model is, you know, the accuracy of all the elements and everything moving, the consistency of the object. It's just Google has they've really, yeah, they've really come to the top here on all in all perspectives, right?
Yeah, how much were we talking about that before when Sora first posted their videos and trying to get motion out of it, and they're trying to explain how they were calculating physics of those objects, and they had made some progress there, but it wasn't quite there for fluid simulations and other aspects. You just can't beat Google's training data set. They have the largest data set in the world of videos to train on.
Right. We all know how massive YouTube is, right? And that's just something that's really hard to beat. And you know, it's taken them a while, but I'm really glad to see how they finally managed to harness that massive video potential that they have. And honestly, I can't stop looking at those videos. I just want to. I've been sitting here, you know, the first couple of hours and just browsing through Flow TV and looking at all of that. But the fascinating aspect is that, you know, what does this do, and what does this enable other like creators, brands, companies? What kind of new businesses can this spark, right? Like
Right.
because, but in lieu of what we're talking about here, so if you think autonomous businesses and you look at what Flow and VO3 can do, now here's your autonomous media business, right? Here's your ability to launch a complete autonomous serious business. You can launch, you know, a series in 10 episodes, full 30-minute clips with all your characters. You can have them talking. You have the full consistency. So now we're really in the age, you know, that we've been waiting for a year, where you can produce your entire media brand, right? And I think you highlighted that it's not just the media brands, right?
It's not just the media brands. Every brand is a media brand moving forward, and to in an age of abundance, you have to inject personality and taste into your brand from the start. And so to be able to create content rapidly and experiment and have it have taste in there is what every brand will need, and every startup, be it a consumer brand or a software business, right? This point forward, I see every SaaS business having, and the ones that I'm seeing be successful right now that are taking off with AI enabled are very heavy in personality and make you feel emotion to something because and they need to, right? When you talk about switching costs continue to go down on software and SaaS businesses, then you have to have other moats. And so call it community, right? Call it brand, call it emotion that you can build around those is going to be one of the important tools in the tool belt for them. So super broad cases here to build to approach building businesses as media businesses, right?
100%. And it's interesting because we've seen sort of one or two major directions this is going on like your content distribution, right? So the one side is sort of what's been really successful is the social shows lately on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen some of them. There's plenty going around, right? There's a lot of there was the one coffee company that did it very well. And if you look at those, you produce a social show, and that was sort of available to everybody. So you go in, you put your characters in a scene, you repeat that, you collaborate with other influencers, you bring them into your show, and you launch it as a social show. That was highly successful, is highly successful at the moment. But now we see like a different alley that just wasn't possible before, which is you can produce, like we said, your full-on movies to kind of encapsulate the vibe or the community of your brand, right? Which that was just nowhere near possible before unless you had like a $10 million budget to spend to even make that feasible, and now you do it with a $250 a month subscription. That just changes the game entirely.
And there's already also these other trends about people saying that they've effectively watched a movie by watching it through clips on TikTok, of seeing different clips and ultimately consuming a show or a movie that had been clipped up like that and feeling like they had the entire story and they were satisfied by that, right? Like the way people want to consume these stories and are okay with it opens up this short form storytelling format in lots of different ways for even long form content that you want to create out of it. And those, I don't know, what do you want to call it, a story, video novellas type stories are very popular in several countries as well. I think India has a whole abundance that's definitely not anywhere in my feed of the content that's popping off there, and so it's already proven out, and now we have these tools to light up the stories that we want to tell, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a massive chance here also for if you're building like an autonomous business, or you're building your brand, to really differentiate now with good creative direction, right? Which is the one
Mm.
thing that I think a lot of people miss, is that a lot of people think, okay, you go in, you produce your movie, and it's going to be great. But the area that you end up very quickly is AI slop, right? So what you want is you want someone, or it can be you, right? Someone that has a good creative direction to lead the AI into the autonomous, even if it's just, feeding the right prompts, making the right settings, and making it a repeatable process so you can scale it autonomously. But I think there's a huge opportunity now to get a good creative in, get a good baseline creative direction, do that first sort of creative direction planning, and then just go and blast, right? Because with that, I think you have sort of the initial human in the loop, which is, I think, very important to avoid the AI slop, and then go and scale it indefinitely.
Yeah. What comes to mind off the top of your head of like the maybe two or three most important items to put in that creative brand building definition from the front that's going to be the most impacting and have the most trickle down to everything else in the process and the content that comes out the other side based off of your experience of creating some videos
Yeah,
like this?
that's a great question. I think there's an interesting. So I'll start with a mistake. I think I have two very precise things. So if you want to work with AI, most people do the same mistake. They try to describe feelings and emotions that they have, and they expect the AI to output that for them. So you go in and you say, I want this to be more soft, or I want like a nice vibe, or I want it to feel this and that way. And the interesting thing is there's a big differentiation that AIs aren't necessarily, or most LLMs, except for, the Mid Journey model is a good example. That's different. But most LLMs are not trained on on emotional factors, how it makes you feel, but they're trained on objective, on objects, on materials, on lighting, on camera control, on all of those aspects that you actually see.
Yeah.
So this is where the creative direction is important, because this is the translation that you want to do at the step before you create your videos with the AI. You want to go in and you want to say, okay, this is the feeling that I want this to produce. This is the feeling that I want my brand to be, right? That's obviously your CI, your branding, your tone of voice and everything. How does that translate to visual, right? So let's say you want your brand to be luxury and a bit wild, right? Then you want to talk about sparkling diamonds. You want to talk about clear crystal materials. You want to talk about soft shadows, right? Like if you're a good example on how to describe it is, let's say you're a luxury brand that tries to sell, perfumery, right? Then what you want to do is you want to say, okay, I have soft pastel colors, I have light shadows, I have harsh light here, I have a lot of soft materials. Like maybe I'm not going to use plastic and steel, but I'm actually going to use fur, right? As an example, or other soft shapes. And so this is the key to actually good creative direction with AIs. Translate your emotions into what it would result in the actual things that you're seeing. So
Mm.
materials, lights, colors, control, shadows, field of depth, all of those things are critical to learn. Once you have mastered how to translate your feelings into the materials and lights and everything, now you can use this and create this as your blueprint. This is your brand blueprint for an LLM, for the AI, and now push that into production. And then you will achieve like a consistent style and a consistent feel.
Makes sense. It almost sounds like, from my understanding of what a on a film set, a director of photography, a DP, kind of does, right?
Very
How
similar.
do
Yeah.
they see the scene? How is the scene lit? How does all the composition come together to bring the pre planning on the page and the vibe that the director is going for into the lens, right? And I don't know, maybe, for I'll put myself in the novice camp, definitely, compared to you, Calvin, and being able to describe this. My first thought would be I'd go give my LLM that job role and help me translate
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
something along the lines of, you're a director of photography and you're going to help me on my pre-planning for a commercial shoot that I'm doing. I'm going to describe to you my brief, and I need you to put it in terms that are going to translate into the actions to light that and such, like you laid out. That's how my mind goes. I put a translator in between my
Yeah,
feelings
and
and the outcomes.
I think it's definitely, it really depends on which model you use. There's a high difference in which model you try to apply it to, because some models get better at it. Like if you look at all the OpenAI models, they do get better at translating that. So they're trained better in terms of, if you give it an emotion, what does it translate to? It has a better training context in terms of the material that it was trained on than, for example, if you look into most of the Google models today, or also most of, well, I would say 3.7 Sonnet is fairly okay at it, but not as good at it, right? So some models just behave better at capturing human emotion and translating it into something else, just because their training set was a bit, or the RLHF was done better on that. And some are more leading and some are less. But it's definitely a good approach to try and put that character in there. Just be wise about which model you pick.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And so let's maybe step through, as a autonomous business, autonomous media company here. Where do you take it to get to your end goal? So my mind goes to, we're talking about going where the attention is, that short form video content. Could tell stories in a series in that as well, which is super interesting. Could tell it in self-contained stories that happen to just be consistent in characters and aren't a series from one to the other, right? And then my mind goes to, like, do you want to move them down the funnel to longer form content, be it for entertainment and into a longer episode or movie, or longer form content about your brand vibes for a consumer brand or software brand, for example? Does that kind of make sense of like how do you get this attention, you capture it, then what do you do with it next? And what's the steps in between? They've seen a TikTok short and they're paying you money, right? There's
Yeah,
a lot in between that.
yeah. I think, yeah, it's interesting. You touched on a lot of that before, right? Like if you, how people discover like movies or series now in shorts is totally different. It's almost funny because the movie or the series is telling this cohesive story from A to B, right? So you start the story and it is a continuous storyline and a string. But the way that you discover it on TikTok is chaotic, right? You you get this piece and this piece. And it's almost funny because you're kind of sort of picking the pieces and trying to put the story in your head together until you eventually, okay, I kind of want the actual sequence of it. But so to answer your question, I think the interesting thing is really to produce an end-to-end show, right? So think of it more as like a cohesive storyline, whether you want to condense it into a movie or you want to do it in multiple series. I think on multiple episodes of a series, which I think is probably the better way, just because it gives you a lot more content, and that's just more naturally how people consume today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you would want to produce that full series, and I think all the rules that we had before still apply. And I'm going to go to that autonomous side here in a second. But assume you have an audience, right? You have your audience. So that's sort of the main thing that everything revolves around. Let's assume you have a specific character that somehow plays in the audience, right? Like let's say it's a, you know, your character is a movie producer and is struggling with all of the things. Like you take the Seth Rogen, the studio example, right, on
So
Apple
good.
TV, and you kind of just, take it a step to the right, make it animated, put a whole series to it, and that is all for your movie producer audience. And now with AI, now you have the ability to take quick news into it, like a South Park did, right? You take news of the day, put a new episode, put the episode out, right? So, for example, in our case, we would now just be frantically struggling because oh God, Flow and Google announced this thing, right? And you have this new AI thing that pops in and everyone goes crazy and you make a series about it, right? And you can launch it the next day. You push your shorts in. So how do you make that autonomous, right? You see there's the data influx, you have your general context, your general storyline that is set, and then you put in the individual data and put it in a production pipeline, like now with Flow, put it out, chunk it out with something like Opus Clip, or you have your own automation to chunk it out and push it onto all your social channels very quickly. And you start going from there. Now, how do you turn it into a business? I think there's multiple ways you monetize your audience, right? Like in that scenario, like either you go down the funnel of just straight out selling episodes at some point, just because you have your entertainment brand, right? So monetizing, um, or you go down the path and monetize with ads in the series, right? Product placement is an interesting
Mm.
example, right? Like I think I don't think you have to reinvent the monetization wheel. I think you can use all what's out there. You just do it way more efficiently at a hundredth of the cost and at a 10 times the speed, because then the incumbent studios won't be able to beat you. Like there's just no way a South Park episode or anything else will come out in time about you know flow of View 3 versus you can produce it right on the spot and you get it out in 2 hours and the people like your show, right, and follow it.
Yeah, that's super interesting to think about from monetization of, again, not reinventing the wheel, media sponsorships of different types, that product placements, to do a consistent product placement inside of a generative video now is also on the table, right? That's really interesting. The classic dedicated video just to a product sponsor to monetize the audience as well. I think that one becomes even more attractive and interesting because you can create just really compelling content, fun content out of that. When you're not bound by the laws of physics in the type of content that you create, now you can do something that's entertaining, that people don't mind watching it as an ad effectively, and you're integrating now your character, your brand into it, that people already have an affinity to and enjoy watching, is also a lot better than an ad read in the middle of a video, right?
Right. Or there's also slight steps to the right on that, right? You don't have to say Pepsi, right? You can say Mepsi, but it'll still sort of, it will be similar enough, and you don't necessarily have to count in the ad bucket. It will still be fine, and it can still have an offshoot for the brand Pepsi, right? Like there's a lot of interesting brand deals that aren't too obvious that work very, very well, and
Yeah.
don't strike the audience as you're trying to make ads, because they obviously make the connection. They still are connected with the brand. It still gets them to wanting to have a drink, and it still gets them out of the door to potentially buy one, right? Like the the media ad budget still works in that scenario.
Yep. And now go back to character creation as well. And I'm thinking I tilt towards animated in my head, but there's now with the ability to just create such human lifelike characters that are speaking with emotion that's lip sync to that opens up a whole nother avenue. But for the sake of this example, thinking about animated characters also again don't have to reinvent the wheel of monetization paths there. So how do you give someone the ability to get more of the character that they like? And so you're talking about classic merchandise of clothing and shirts and plushies and digital experiences, sticker packs, right? Some digital games, and that's a whole nother episode that we should do about the digital game creation tools, where all of a sudden you're creating whole worlds or taking them into a Roblox and creating worlds there with them. So we'll kind of keep it short there, but the options there are endless to take that brand love and let people extend that and let them give you money for what they enjoy, right? They that's where Patreon has thrived, that people want to support creators. And so the more you can have that value exchange, that the consumer gets to enjoy that brand, they want to make sure it keeps the episodes keep coming and the brand thrives and extends. And so they're looking for places to give you $1, $2, $3, $4 at a time in those interactions.
Right, right. And I think what's fundamentally changed is, again, with lower costs to produce something, you open up the alley of going into more and more niche audience specific content, right? Just because it's feasible now, right? Like if you had to produce a pilot for, let's say, I don't know, I mean, a plumber is a big industry. Let's pick something a bit smaller, like what we talked about before, right? Let's take the I'm trying to think of something
I mean,
that's
you could
niche enough.
a
Yeah,
plumber is still a niche thing. That's the thing, is that there's like, yeah, it's a big niche, but it's still a niche.
fair enough.
Dog walkers, right? Like there's all kinds of interesting niches that you could create content that resonates with them. I was listening to something the other day, and they were talking about how to capture attention to reach veterinarians, and they said go to the cat and dog meme channels and go work with them to capture where the vets are already consuming content there to get their attention, right? That's
Yeah, 100%. And it makes it easier for, like it does in any business building that we talked about, right? In Germany, there's a very fun series, and it's about a crime scene cleaner, and
that's very
it's an awesome
specific.
series. It's very specific, right? There's like three or four series. I think there's seasons. I mean, there's a couple more. I think it's season 5 or 6. It went on for a while. It was super wildly successful. Um, but let's go. If we go back to like the plumber example, right now, what you can do is you can test all of that with your audience, right? So you create the main character is a plumber. You give them a main storyline, right? You do all of these things. You get them to watch, and eventually you kind of insert the products. You do the plushies. You sell the vibes. Like you said, it's. I think the playbook is fairly clear, right? And I think it's the great thing that we have now is, okay, it's not 100,000 to produce that pilot, right? It's maybe 1,000. Um, Now produce 10 to 20 pilots for each of your test audiences, see which resonates the best, and then go ahead and produce the show. And you can probably trial, one every 3 to 4 days. If it's just you, if you have a team, it's faster. And you go out and test it with an audience.
Yeah. And then thinking about like applying some of that same playbook to, again, let's go with software business to move it even further away from animated characters and series on TikTok and shorts.
Mm-hmm.
I was diving into some HR benefit software this past week, and just doing some different analysis, and think about a dry space like that, HR software, benefits management. It's still really the same to resonate. You're trying to entertain and capture that person's attention, and to sell the benefits of your software, of your product, you need to hit on what are the pain points, right? And so hitting on the pain points of how much time is spent doing administrative paperwork that is just repetitive task work that they know they shouldn't be doing. And so then it goes, again, going back into the niche of who's your audience, your ICP, just really knowing them and telling a story to them that's going to resonate, and they see it and they say, oh yeah, that's me. I mean, they can see themselves in that story or can totally relate and understand. And now you get to add some flavor and voice into that is that's entertaining, that's playful, takes it from a really boring, like I'm going to do another demo of another HR management system software from another sales rep, to, oh, this one is fun and they get me and they want to solve my problem here, and I want the outcome and beautiful world that this animated character is living in, where they're not doing 200 hours a year of repetitive task work, and now I can actually both live my life and serve my employees in a better way and have a better experience. So I think it's really not that big of a leap from my perspective of what the interesting brands are going to do here in software to become media companies.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because if you, I don't know, I'm getting bombarded with some of these ads, obviously. So I looked at, there's ClickUp, there's Motion, right? There's so many of these ads, and they're all still ads, right? I don't feel, I mean, they obviously, they try their best to tell the problem in 30 seconds, right? And make it entertaining and make it fun. And I understand that there's a lot of creatives. I don't want to bash on anybody. But if you think about it, like to me as a consumer, it doesn't feel like this evokes the level of, yeah, trust and they get me, versus if I really try to produce a series and actually told the story and make it more like a series, like The Office, or pick your reference, right? Um, and just tell that over a while, right? Go the long mile of keeping to tell that story and actually get people really engaged and, like you said, make them feel like you understand them. Then I think the leap is a whole different one. And we all know where the CAC of the last years has been, right? It's like customer acquisition costs are just not great through
No,
regular advertising, right? We've
upside down.
Yeah, it's definitely hasn't been the best, and at some scale, sure, but I think there's, yeah, like we said, huge upside potential of just doing it that more organic content production way.
And that's a really good callback to thinking about and planning through a series versus thinking about I'm now going to create an ad that happens to use this technology. I think it's a really good point to not overlook, because it, as you're calling out, it can come across as they're trying to relate, but it's almost like a tourist has come along into my space, my industry, my area of expertise, and what they're presenting here is kind of a mockery, a mimicry of it, a caricature of it that's not fun, that's too far in a jest, and because it's trying to be self-contained, versus if you laid it out in a series and you said, okay, we're going to tell a story across this, that part of a script would stand out like a sore thumb in a good, like, planned out series, for example. That's like, oh, that's too kitschy of a moment in there, right? That's too on the nose in the wrong way, and so let's cut that or revamp that. But if you look at it as just that individual ad unit, how many terrible Super Bowl ads have been created and greenlit, spent millions of dollars on and made and pushed all the way through because it was this one self-contained little moment that was pushed out there, and it wasn't thought about in a holistic way, right?
Yeah, and then sure, in some way they work, right? Sure, they drive their signups, right? It's not like they don't give you anything. It's just not a really, I think it's not really a sustainable, very lasting way to spend your money on, right? Like, the world has shifted a lot. And like I said, just if I look at myself as a consumer, we might be different. But I think just looking at the content that I really like is exactly that. That is just, really sort of well thought, good long content that I can follow and I consume every day, and I see it popping up on my thing, every day or two, right? And I continue to consume this for like a month, and I'm like, hey, wow, I'm definitely going to subscribe and follow. I like it. You go down the funnel, you build the trust, and it's just I'm going to buy from that company, right? Quite frankly, like I think the conversion just goes up, and the quality of your community just goes up, and now you can tell, yeah, you can tell fascinating stories, and most importantly, you can test and try a lot without over exceeding the budget. Just play and build it. Um,
And what's a good metric? I think a really great important metric there too to think about how you're converting from that short form and even long form content uh, isn't necessarily dollars spent either, because that's almost a lagging indicator in most funnels. Is I would argue how much are you shifting from rented audience to owned audience? So the rented audience being those social platforms, and you are getting their subscribes, which is part of the steps and moving them down that funnel. But then how do you go from those number of views and those number of subscribes to tracking closely how many of those go to your website and provide their email because you gave them something else that was valuable enough that they wanted to give you their email, or especially phone number, to be able to send them a text is an even higher inbox of importance. And depending on what you're trying to accomplish, it may be tactics like giveaways that get people to provide that information. It may be in the reports and guides and lead magnets for a software company, for example. But the journey there is another middle step that gets missed, I think, by when you start talking about an autonomous business, media business, to go from content to monetization. Like you're saying, there's a lot of trust to build there to get the subscribe, and then sure, they can click on the store and all of a sudden buy a product, but probably, and maybe they buy once, but even then you're trying to get their information so you can nurture them for the long term. Because if you're trying to build an autonomous business, not a pop-up shop. You could build a pop-up shop, do something cool, capture people's attention, sell 1,000 shirts, and have a cool little project. But if you want to build a sustainable business out of it, it's about building those funnels of trust, right? And entertainment.
yeah, yeah, and it's also it's like a movement. I see this very often in a sense. Like same with social shows. We talked about merch being one an alley to monetize, but it's also a marketing tool, right? Quite frankly, because if you create a show, right? And there's one aspect, one sentence, whatever goes viral in your show. You produce a shirt for that. You sell the shirts. The people are walking around with the shirts. Your brand gets seen, and it turns into free advertising that people paid you for. Right? It's a very like all of those. I think as the digital space gets more and more crowded, right? Like these options to actually do IRL advertising basically and getting paid for it are just massive, right? It's fascinating because here, like in Australia, this is incredibly common now, right? Like everybody walks around with some branded shirt of some shop or brand just because they like it, they support it, they like the values, they like the ethics behind it, and they just do it all the time. And I see that in a lot of other places in the world too. And I think it's a great way for you to actually build what you said, like a sustainable brand.
Yeah, it's the ability for them to have a tighter association with that identity, right? It becomes their identity. They can take your brand values and the brand guidelines and concept that you laid out all the way at the beginning that we talked about, and show that they represent that as well, and feel that, and then share that too with others, because they want to share their identity. They want to be early and right to a new trend and brand and identity as well. So they let them help you grow your autonomous business, right?
Right. and I think it's just a better way of building, like, instead of building an e-com store, right, where you have to do all of the selling. It can be, in the end, still, part an e-commerce business, but you get all the other benefits of building a big brand from it, right, and building an extra big business from it, rather than you just trying to have to, like, Amazon FBA or whatever and work your way through it.
How do I'll ask this? Do you see other brands, companies? So I'm thinking, yeah, consumer brands, physical products, services, software, just having a media arm to make media that aren't ads, that aren't about like pushing on featuring the products, and they're just trying to capture attention with entertainment, and then the link between those is just much lighter. And
Hmm.
somebody starts to go down that funnel like we were talking about, that like way down there, then all of a sudden they discover the brand behind it, and
Hmm.
may ultimately buy that product. But a brand could literally do all the other part of the playbook to build a media company, get people excited about it, wearing that media, that character around, and spreading it. And then you go one click deeper and you go, well, what is this really? And it's a software company. It's a plumber. It's right. It's a, what, something under that. Do you think people will go that far, or is that like living too far out in the future right now, that they're still thinking about how do I make ads out of this as quickly as possible?
I I mean, I think there is a few, do you know the Brooklyn coffee shop? Have you seen that ad? They're
I have
clearly,
not.
I forgot what the brand behind it is. I can actually, let me see if I can, let me share this for a second here. Um, this one here. Have you seen those where they, it's like they basically, this is like an edition. They're always in the same location, and they always, the two get two in the coffee shop, and they have this weird story. This is like where they're talking about, being Martians from the future, and they just discussing about, you know, talking about Martian creators, and they just want their coffee and their vanilla latte and stuff, and they are sponsored behind by a coffee company, obviously, by a coffee shop company, and you can't see it anywhere. But they produced a show. This is like episode 100, right? They're vastly successful. It's always the same scene. It's always the same coffee shop, always in a different makeout. It's always the two characters, and they collaborate with lots of influencers in the space. And like they've built that media brand very, very well. And I don't know, this is, I think, I don't know if this is a repost. Um, Oh, you can see what are we at here? Oh yeah, I can't see that, but I mean you see the comment numbers, right? And I think
Yeah.
they're way up in the, this one has like 390,000 likes, just to give like a bit of a frame of reference.
Wow.
I don't know how many views, right? I think every single video is in the millions. And so this is a classic example. They've done 100. Well, I mean, this is 100. I think they're probably now at 110 or something episodes of this. Always the same recipe, always repeating that, and they haven't they haven't mentioned yet the brand in there anywhere, right? They haven't done the ads, but it's been going through the social channels. Most people know what is behind it, and people started liking it because they love the vibes. And I think they have billions of views. You can see, they get different musicians in, but it's always a little bit of a different scene. But always, the numbers here are just, and this is like episode, what is that, episode 25 or whatever. You can go through the entirety, and they kind of just repeated the same motion over and over. Where now, they're from the future and there's only water and they sell luxury water and whatnot. But it's all in a coffee shop essentially. And, yeah, but it's so we see some couple of those examples playing out.
Yeah.
And like
This is a great
now,
example.
yeah, now what we didn't have before is they, you can actually produce, like we said, full on movies or content that's not like that, because how they did that is smart, right? It's the same location, it's the same characters. You basically, your budget is very, very low, but you can achieve a lot with it, and you get the influencers in. That's what you end up paying for, um, and where you sort of buy your organic reach. But now you can do the most surreal stuff without that budget. Right now you can do whatever, pick those characters and actually put them on Mars and have them walking through, which none of them had budget before, right? So
Yep.
this is
Yep.
where it just scales to 10x now or
And you can
100x.
and still have consistent characters, have a consistent style, putting them in different places as well. It can, and so that also helps with not only you know the budget for shooting something like that is assuming we're using AI generative tools there that helps with that side, but also just the planning of the content. So if you know this is the structure, this is the we have a back wall to play with. Is it going to have all water on it? Is it going to have newspapers on the window? And you have these couple of elements to adjust, and then you can again going back to describing an entire scene as a director of photography. You have a lot less that you have to test as you iterate on describing it. If you know really well how to describe the scene that you're laying out and the variation to that effectively one set, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you can just, now you let the LLM do another variant, right? Just keep varying the recipe. You can
Exactly.
chunk those very quickly.
What would you say to existing creators today? Let's go with people that are recording videos looking directly into the camera type style, right? Something like that. Just trying to frame this type of creator. And so they have an audience. They're talking to their audience today, creating short form content. How do they get into this? Where should they be using this? Do they create a whole nother channel and they only play with it there? Do they infuse it in what they do? Do we start to see hybrid comped in content where these tools are actually just used for the background and motion and the call it green screened are together where it's got the person, the influencer in the front of the scene? What do you think some of the best creators will get going? How they'll approach going at this?
So you say specifically for existing content creators, right? Or like people who are right now actually looking into the camera, right?
Yeah, doing those talking head videos today, right? What can they do with this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because they serve they currently so current content creators serve a little bit of a different, or these sort of direct face videos serve a little bit of a different purpose. Like, a lot of that is news, right? A lot of that is latest featuring how to's, to do's, right? All of those big spectrums that I think that I don't think that I think will remain relevant. I think what's interesting, what's probably a good suggestion for these content creators is really to explore the deeper levels of creativity in the content that they produce, which is now enabled by them. So I think it's actually less just green screening other content. I think it's probably really encouraged for them to build out their brand more by making their character more than what just sits in front of a desk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like really thinking about, build a future world, build a world that you can place yourself in and really start to tell an immersive story around yourself, right? To further that brand. I think that's probably what I would do. Um,
Yeah,
I
that's
want
really good.
one more thing to share here because that's interesting. Like the shop that I shared before. If you look at if you look at their collabs that don't exist, this is the shop that they have behind it. Just a sidebar. Um, and I don't know how far these affiliations go, but they always say this is non-existing collabs. But
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
Uh huh.
it's like it's all the just like you know it's who might be pushing or sponsoring behind that,
Yep.
you know. So that's just
And they're
a
not
just a
getting
little
taken down.
sidebar. No, they're not getting taken down. They haven't gotten a cease and desist, and like we said, they have a billion views right now. So that's probably a good way for them to go and monetize. And goes back to what we said, right? Sell your merch after that. So they're pretty much following that strategy smartly.
Yeah. The That makes total sense. The other one, let me share this one too. The other place I think about this is, so I think about Cleo Abrams does, she
Hmm.
does really good content. That's great long form content, explainer videos. So I just think about this black hole one. And so
Hmm.
I left it on this thumbnail quick to roll over it. And you see, you go from a thumbnail that is her, just like these other interview videos. And this is the long form of that video right above, and into animations to explain it. So I'll go full screen on that
Hmm.
as well. And so she's voicing over this right now here, describing it. And I think this is a great opportunity to stitch in way better B-roll, way better explanations,
Hmm.
animations like this, right? Someone animated this. Someone made this to stitch into this interview video.
Hmm.
And this one has a lot, as you can see, I'm scrolling through. There's a lot of animations to take a very complex thing of black holes and bring visuals to it. So many visuals, actually. Oh my gosh, this is so heavy in visuals.
Hmm.
And so the ability for anyone to be able to create more compelling content of talking head content with this learning, teaching in between it, I think is a really interesting use case. The Kurzgesagt in a nutshell videos are also, they're fully animated,
Yeah.
which is also another example of these animated explainer videos. Like they just did this whole big one on fentanyl, for example, and it's in a style. The characters have a style, right? And they have. I don't think this one has any of the. There's the ducks. They've got the ducks, uh,
Yeah.
and so here's an opportunity to make lots of really great explainer videos as well, for all kinds of topics to teach. And so it could be industry specific, again, moving people down the funnel and educating them on your space without pushing your product. And now you're showing authority in your niche. Or it could be that is the content itself, and that is it's education for education's sake, and then again running those other playbooks to monetize that audience and give them more interaction points, and maybe pushing them down to more interactive and digital education products that you might have, courses they could buy, those types of things.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I think the whole sort of edutainment space I find personally quite fascinating, right? Because edutainment is such an interesting bubble because you're never going to run out of things to teach on, right? You're never going to run out of things to make it entertaining with, right? And now just flip them in all their varieties and keep pushing them out, right? I think there's a lot of consistency. And like you said, going back to if you focus it around a specific audience, potentially one that is quite boring, where there's not very much content, like you said, go HR, right? Um, or there's lots of other training that I can think of that is probably boring enough out there, and make it entertaining and just crush it. I think that goes back to when you shared sort of the Y Combinator AI full stack sort of side of things, right? If you really think about building, yeah, like you said, being your new law firm or maybe your new HR stack tool or whatever you're trying to be, and you use full AI stack, I can only see this being the way to do it going forward. Meaning you just full on produce exciting edutainment. You have one resource that's fully whose sole role is to just focus on leading like the AI agents to push that out continuously. And I think you'll just crush the incumbents because there's no way that anyone currently gets to, getting to the newer audience on any of the social mediums. Like there's just no way they're going to do that as quickly unless they sort of hire that resources, you know, through an agency. And even that, I think we've seen the results of that just ends up getting dragged into the like corporate decision making funnel and watered down and just doesn't end up in that, right? So if you're someone, the new kid on the block just trying to own the full stack where you don't have any of those limitations, I think we're in a whole different spectrum of actually making that possible. Because we've seen it over and over again, right? Like if you're I mean like if you're like an old school incumbent in an old school area where you don't really have the pressure to move, yes, you're going to try AI video, maybe, right? Maybe you have a good exec in there
Maybe.
that's going to try and push that, maybe, right? There will be some. I'm not saying there's none, like everybody, like there's a lot of people thinking about it. But if you think about the actual execution and then making that in your processes happen and then go through sort of your middle management layer to not water it down, to not get into all the, blacklisted things that'll make your concept die along the way, then I think as someone new to the block and just trying to own the full space, you have a unique opportunity in just pushing that hard for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And it would take a founder level person at larger organizations, or a bring back the chief creative officer role again, and that has full authority to just go end to end and push out the taste like that, right? And not water it down, and be responsible for pushing that out to capture attention, because at the end of the day, it's all going to be about capturing attention, regardless of what your autonomous business that you're building. So, yeah, make it fun.
For sure. And it's like, and I mean, honestly, this is the fun part. Like, I think it has never been as creatively exciting and fulfilling to do because, I've done ad like big scale ad production for 5 years of my life, right? With all the big car companies from BMW to Mercedes to Toyota to Porsche. Like we were part of a big production house to do all of those things. And I think about it, we've had so much fun. And I was part of the conceptual team where we, built the concept before we pitched it to the clients to actually make them reality. And I've always really enjoyed the conceptual part. The part that I found is always dragging is then, okay, then you get your budget and everything, but then you're at the set and nothing can go wrong, right? Like you have the leeway that you have on like changing things. Sure, like the creatives do a great job at improvising, but it always felt so bogged down, right? Like you can't just, you know, be fluid. And now we can be fluid with our concepts and just, test, experiment, change the script, go forward and backward. It feels like so much more of a natural process to create your content than it has ever been before. So I think that's really exciting. Like I think we've really entered a totally new era of creative that we just haven't been able to capture before. And that's against all the sort of doomsaying of how's this going to change content. But I think it's marvelous, the entire new creative age that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much fun.
Still so much
Right?
fun. Still plan like you're getting your shot list together, and then go capture your shot list, put it together, you know, with using these AI tools, and then go play and see what actually resonates within that, and double down on the areas that do, replace the ones that don't. The cost to do that is so much lower, right? You don't have to put the shoot all the way back together again and do a reshoot on a commercial. Something would have had to have just gone horribly wrong to even green light putting all that budget back together,
And we've
compared
we've
to
had to do that a couple of times, and you don't know the pain, right? Like you have to get 30 people back on a set somewhere in the middle of nowhere, including getting the cars there, getting the equipment shipped there. Like we're talking 100K for an extra shooting day that you somehow had to pull off, right?
no.
Because something went wrong. I mean, there's a funny story once where we had cleared an entire we had cleared the road and everything, and we had an intern driving a car, and she didn't know that the route was open temporarily for other cars to pass through, right? And so she stopped, and a car hit her from back, so she was fine, and I had to bring her to like a doctor and whatnot. But like the car crashed. There was glass everywhere. The the camera lenses were shattered, right? Because there was so many things happening, and that cost an entire shooting day. And the mess that has caused, wild. Now, if I think about it, that just doesn't happen anymore, right? It's
Yeah,
like you can change that entire scene. Um, yeah, fascinating times.
for sure. Well, I think, Calvin, we've covered a ton of how to get started with Google Flow, new studio product here, the VO3 model as well. Really just get in there and get your hands on it is what I tell people, is the best way to get started. And then start and apply these lessons, and go out there and iterate and see what resonates, see what's fun to create, choose your audience you want to go speak to. If you have the opportunity to pick, anywhere you could create content, something that resonates with you, that you want to, wake up for every day, every week for a little while and try out. And that's, the freedom that is here.
Yeah. And just really make it entertaining and fun and right and play with your audience, right? I think it's exciting.
They'll tell you what they like.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap up here. Calvin, where can people find you and connect with you?
Well, I think there's two things. Like there's always still the good old LinkedIn, LinkedIn/my name. And the other way is I'm going to start posting my own AI videos. I've produced the first one last week, so I'm going to go back on Instagram and shoot a lot of them out. And you also can find me by my name there. So it's Calvin Hennis.
Awesome. Definitely everybody go like and subscribe there. And the biggest compliment you can give to us here is like and subscribe to this podcast. Please share it with somebody that would find this valuable and entertaining. And if you're building autonomous businesses like this media business we've talked about here, or want to get help transforming your business with AI agents, you can go to kevinnews.com, and I've got more resources there to be able to learn more and how to connect to collaborate as well. Would love to do great things with great people. So, all right.
Amazing.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.